Hello, everybody, and welcome into another free agency video here. This is not a preview. This is this is a day one reaction. Lots of stuff happened on the first day of free agency. Probably not the most exciting. I mean, we said this before. That it's not going to be the most exciting because there's not a lot of big names left. And I mean, all the big names went before day one, like Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand. All those guys all re-signed with the teams that they were. So not a lot of big names, but there was some stuff that happened. Some big, I'd say the trades are the more things that happened today rather than free agents. But we'll get into that. So I got Mike Fink. I got Zach Martin here. Zach was on a little preview video before. Mike, of course, you've seen him everywhere on different things. Mike, how's it going?
It's been good. First of all, it's great to be back with you two, just discussing hockey in general. It's always fun talking with you guys. It's been a little weird this off season because I've been a lot busier. I'm used to in previous off seasons covering the Islanders. You knew Lamorella wasn't doing anything, so you knew you had the day off. And I knew, all right, I don't need to really pay attention so much. This off season, just so much is going on, not just with the Islanders, but around the league that it's been one of those days where you know that if you take a nap for a few minutes, you know you're going to miss that big trade, which happened today. But that's aside the point.
For sure. And Zach, I mean, it's been a bit of a crazy day for you for the Hurricanes. I mean, really only one big thing, but still, I mean, that is a pretty big one. So let's jump right into that because, I mean, this concerns the team you cover. That's the Hurricanes getting Keandre Miller from the New York Rangers. And it was a signing trade. So, of course, they got him and then signed him, or was signed before and then traded. I mean, all that stuff. What did you think about the trade when it came down? I know it took a little bit of time to get all the pieces, but what do you think of the big trade here?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because, you saw that like very early afternoon of, there's a trade going to happen between the Rangers and the Hurricanes. It's going to involve Keandre Miller. Then it was just waiting and waiting and waiting. And then it just came down to, you like everyone's waiting for the return. Then it was, what's the contract? Then you got the contract. Then you wait for the return. And then you get the full picture. And I think a lot of people are still kind of mixed on the AAV and what the Hurricanes had to give up. But Eric Tolsky said it afterwards, too, at his availability, that, they believe in they believed in the trade. They had to pay a little bit higher than what people thought was. But we all know this. If you want to be better, you're going to have to give up good assets. And that's just the thing that it is nowadays, especially for a guy like Keandre Miller, who's 25. So they give up Scott Morrow, who's a right shot defenseman prospect. Did play some games in the playoffs. And they gave up a conditional 2026 first, which it's the better of Carolina or Dallas. But Dallas is the top 10 protected for next year. And they gave up a second rounder in 2026 as well. So, I mean, if all intents and purposes, depending on what first rounder they give up, they can just do what they've done the last two drafts. Just get rid of the first, get a couple seconds in the second round. I mean, that's just their brand. I'm already reserving myself to be like, all right, first round doesn't matter next season because we're going to go get our seconds because we have one first left and no second rounders. But I think the trade is fine. I mean, it is what it is. If they pay up a little extra, so be it. Like I said, Keandre Miller's 25, and then you go give him an 8-year deal of $7.5 million per season, which – on all intents and purposes, it's still It's $250,000 less than what you were paying for Orlov, but you got younger, faster, higher offensive upside, and a guy who hasn't really hit his full potential ceiling. And you're going to Carolina, who has developed defensemen every single season. We saw with Brady Shea back in 2020, and now you get Keandre Miller at 25. His contract runs the exact same amount of time as Jacob Slavin's. They're both done at the end of the 2032-33 season. So I think it's a great one. And I know a lot of people are freaking out. Why is he making more than Slavin? Well, Slavin took a discount to go to 6.4. It's not, they don't view Miller more than Slavin. It's just Slavin took less. And they got Keandre Miller for 8 years. Like, the money doesn't matter in terms of who's better than who. It's just some guys want to take a hometown discount to help your team out. So overall, I'm fine with it. Does it stink to lose Morrow? Yes. But overall, I think I think the trade was all right. And I think the extension is going to be worth it because the cap's going up to $104 million plus next year. 7.5 ain't going to be worth nothing. Look at all the defensemen who just got signed over the last few days. They're making way more than what Miller is going to be making.
Yeah.
And the Hurricanes still have over $19 million in cap. Not even worried about it. I think it's great all around, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. And I mean, it was pretty much said they were going to trade Miller from the Rangers, especially after they signed Gavrikov. I mean, that was you're kind of writing on the wall after that. Okay, someone's going to have to go, and it was Miller. So I think it was a good trade for the Hurricanes, especially when they kind of, I don't know if they struck out on any free agents today. I mean, but they did get a guy that is probably better than a lot of the free agents that are out there. Like you said, 25 years old, he's just entering his prime, and of course going to be joining a team that knows how to develop defensemen, and in a system that's really good for defensemen. So I think it's a good trade for both sides too. Mike, what did you think about that trade, the Miller one here?
My first reaction was I like the trade. I don't like the term. I think everyone kind of has that reaction where it's a 7.5 million or 7 million range, which is interesting because obviously everyone thinks, well, I looked it up on Puckpedia where Jacob Slavin's making less than him. And obviously that's the first reaction, which is, I had to look that up and it's like, wait, would rather Jacob Slavin's more valuable, but obviously he takes a pay cut to stay there. And that's why it explains a lot there. I think the other part I look at Romanov's contract, which was at 6.25. So a little bit less. And I don't know. It's interesting because Keandre Miller is similar in the sense that they're both more stay-at-home defensemen. They don't really provide a lot of offense. Keandre Miller never really provided that. Maybe if he in Carolina plays with a shutdown option there, it allows him to have more free reign and open up the offense there. But I think I like the player, obviously. I think Keandre Miller, you're running the risk because he has had his inconsistencies, especially recently. But overall, I think this is a good deal for them. And the big part for Carolina is this gives them a much younger defense this season. Their defense was good last year. You had obviously Slave and Orlov was playing really well. The big picture was how many players were under the age of 30, and the answer was one or two, or not really many key contributors. I think Jalen Chatfield is one of them, but you get Miller, and I think Alexander Nikishin, who was in the playoffs, I think there for a bit, is going to be part of that lineup. If I'm getting his name correctly, I'm not sure, but you have all of a sudden two younger defensemen coming in that gives you more speed, gives you really a better, more well-rounded unit. So I mean, and that's kind of what the Hurricanes want. I think like a lot of the criticism obviously online was about Brent Burns and being too slow and all that stuff. So getting Miller there, you immediately have a lot more speed on your defense. You have a lot better, obviously, puck handling, puck movement, and it's going to help out overall your offense. And that's why overall it's a good deal. The term, maybe you are a little nervous about that working out, especially because of his inconsistency, but overall it's good. And I think what's funny is I had written down for Carolina is that I think went under the radar the extension Stankoven got, which is a pretty good deal for him because they're projecting 2 on him, but that's a good term. That's good value for a player who's only getting better and has already proven he's a top player, especially in the playoffs. He was one of their top players. So I think overall Tulski's again doing a good job. Maybe he'll want to do a little more at the trade deadline or really to get this team over the hump because that's their big picture thing. But overall, yeah, you look at that, you look at what they did today and you're like, yeah, they're still going to be the best team in this division, or at least top 2.
Well, and they're not done. Like you said, Zach, they still have a lot of cap space they could potentially work with. I mean, I don't know about free agents. There's not lots left out there unless they can maybe get Ehlers. I mean, that's a possibility. He's still out there, and I'm guessing he's trying to decide. They said he's not going to sign today. So he's still out there. We'll talk about him later on. All right, let's talk about quickly another trade that happened. That was the Blues trading Zachary Bolduc to the Canadiens for Logan Mailloux. And this was a little bit out of left field for me. I know Mailloux kind of got in the trade block, seemed like in the last maybe week or so. But I didn't know that Bolduc was a guy that the Blues were willing to trade because he had a great season. He's had a couple great seasons. Looks like he's starting to come into his own. Michael, start with you. What do you think about this trade? Did it surprise you a bit when it came down? So 1-for-1 too.
I don't think trading Mayu surprised me. I watched him a bit in Laval, and you could tell there's clearly NHL caliber skill there. He's a great at. I think his projection is a second pair two-way defenseman. So he's not going to be the anchor where he's going to get 25 minutes at the NHL level, but he could still get 20 or 18 and play a second pair role and still open up the offense from the point. He's very talented in that sense. So when Montreal gets Dobson, he becomes expendable because you already have Lane Hudson, you already have Noah Dobson. That's two puck moving defensemen, two scoring defensemen. You can move out Mayu. And I was kind of surprised the return at first. I'm like, I thought they would get more for him, or I thought they would maybe get at least another piece because of that, or put him in a deal for a top 6 type of forward. I think Bolduc projects more of a middle 6 option, not necessarily like he's not going to be that player that really takes over games. I thought Mayu, that was why I was thinking like Mayu's going to be part of a package that's really going to get this team over the top. And Montreal is the type of team you're waiting for that big deal in the works. You're waiting for that big trade to happen because you see them as a sleeping giant in the Eastern Conference with all the young talent on the rise, and they get Noah Dobson. You're like, all right, that's the move that's going to start things, but you're thinking maybe there's another one on the way. And I mean, that's also why I thought Logan Mayu would be part of that Dobson trade, actually, because if you're already getting Dobson, you might as well move him out. But overall, yeah, I like this deal. I really like it for the Blues. I know they didn't really need another defenseman like him, but it slides in well, and it's good because with the injuries you probably have to keep in mind. You have to keep in mind for some of the injuries with the Blues blue line, and he helps a lot. And this is just another scoring defenseman. Broberg's going to be there. Cam Fowler's going to be there. And you can just tell that they're building with a good blue line. And so overall, it's a win-win trade. I think I would have asked for more of Montreal, even though I think the Blues kind of knew they were selling something that they had to get rid of. So it's like, you're not really getting the most out of that. But overall, I think win-win trade right now. Every trade's a win-win trade right after free agency. You have to wait like 3 years and be like, oh yeah, they clearly lost this deal. But I digress.
Yeah, I mean, Bolduc, I think, is going to be pretty good in Montreal. I mean, he was really good with the Blues. He had a breakout season there. So I think, yeah, both teams get good pieces for sure. All right, Zach, I alluded to it at the beginning, and that was extensions. And I'll start with Stankoven because that was a big one for the Hurricanes. Mike did mention it there. What do you think about that one? I mean, they, of course, just acquired him in the second Rantanen trade, I guess. And what do you think? I mean, I love Stanko. Everyone knows I love the guy. And it seems like he's fit in really well in Carolina. And now he's going to be there long term.
Yeah, no, it's honestly great. I mean, look at a guy who got, 5 goals and 8 points in the regular season, 19 regular season games, and gets, 5 goals and all that in the playoffs in 15 games. So he played really well in his first few games with Carolina and gave himself a nice pretty penny in terms of getting 8 years with $6 million on the AAV. You'll gladly take that for a guy who's 22, and by the time this contract's up at the end of the 33-34 season, he's going to be 31 when that deal is done. So you're looking at Stankoven for 9 more seasons in Carolina. And the crazy part is he is now his contract is the longest on the Carolina Hurricanes because Slavin's 8 year starts this year. Miller's 8 year starts this year. And like I said, Stankoven doesn't start until next year. And as of currently, he's got the longest contract on the entire roster. And I think he's a great fit. He played very well in the third line with Jordan Stahl and Jordan Martinook at the back end of the regular season and in the playoffs. You could easily throw him into the top 6 if you want to. You could throw him on the power play 2 unit, which would be really good to have because then you got some depth there. And I even say, too, get a little sneaky with it. Why not put him as a third PK option? Because you got Aho, Jarvis as a group and the Jordans together. Why not do maybe like a Mark Jankowski, Logan Stankoven, third PK unit? Everyone's staying fresh. You're not to roll the same 4 guys out in terms of the forward groups. There's another solid option there. So overall, the fact they got this done with an hour before free agency even opened and they don't even have to worry about it next year, you're seeing you're saying pretty great for the Hurricanes, and the AAV is fantastic.
Yeah.
Who says no to $6 million for a guy like that? And think about this too for the core that they have around Stankoven. You get Stankoven who's 22, Seth Jarvis is 23, Jackson Blake's 21, Nikishin's 23 as well, Miller's 25, Kotkaniemi's 24, Svechnikov is 25. When you look at Ahu's 27, Slavin's 29, and Pierre Kachekov's 25. Like that's a lot of guys in that middle to low 20 range and a couple guys in their upper 20s. This core has extended this window for a good number of seasons, and now they're just filling in around that group. I don't know how you're not happy about this. It's a great extension. It works out perfectly for the Hurricanes. And Logan Stankoven even said too during the X interview that it would be a dream for him if he got the extension with Carolina. And he did for 8 years. And Eric Tulsky was like, yeah, we knew right from the jump that he was going to be a Carolina Hurricane. And we're glad that he agreed. And now you're looking at a very good contract that I think even by next year, when the cap goes up to $104 million plus, this is going to be an absolute steal now and in the future for what you're going to get out of him at $6 million per season, which doesn't kick in until next year. So you're feeling pretty good with the fact that he's going into his ELC last year of that before even that contract kicks in. So overall, not a bad way to start your day for Eric Tulsky and the Hurricanes.
I loved it. And I mean, I knew he was probably going to re-sign long-term there.
Oh,
I mean,
100%.
That's just, he just seemed to fit in right away. And
he really does feel like the quintessential like Rod Brindamore type of forward. Like there's a few players on that team that like, oh yeah, they're classic Carolina Hurricane type of player, and he's one of them, which is kind of like he really fits that bill, like how they play and how like they're doing things, and it just makes a lot of sense, and he's going to fit in really well there for the next 8 years.
Sure. There's other big extensions that happened today too, and that was Thatcher Demko and Connor Garland in Vancouver. I love both, even though everyone's kind of on the Demko one. It's not long. It's 3 years, $8.5 million. No one would be balking about this if he was healthy last season and he didn't have the injury issues he's been having. $8.5 million is for what he is as a goaltender when he's healthy. That's market value for a guy like that. And it's only 3 years. Garland 6 years, $6 million. And he's been just like Stankoven in Carolina, he's been a great fit in Vancouver here. And I'm okay with both deals. I mean, I don't know who I want to go to first, but Mike, what do you think about? I mean, you could comment on any of these other extensions. Got Demko, Garland, Ferravari also, and William Eklund.
What's funny is that you put out the list of extensions, and we talked about the Stankoven one, but my mind immediately went to Demko Garland. So I actually wanted to focus on these two because, I like the Garland one. I think he's a very good fit there, and it's interesting because, I think he fits in really well with in the long-term plans. Like he's a player that you're gonna build around. It's interesting because now he's a player that you're gonna build around. Brock Besser's now part of that. We'll get into that. Elias Pettersson's presumably, now that his no trade clause is kicked in, he's a player to build around, whether you like it or not. He's there for a long term. And I mean, obviously the question about if Quinn Hughes is going to be one of those players, but they all hope to get that done. But you're seeing that core. I think what's interesting is that Vancouver's kind of looking at this. Jim Rutherford's looking and saying like, okay, last season was a wash. So much went wrong. Everything was a mess. The way it unraveled. And we're just going to not start over as much as just say, okay, that was an outlier. We're going to change coaches. But other than that, we're not going to just tear it apart, which I think a lot of people were hoping for / wanted to see, because that would have really been chaotic if Pettersson got traded to whether it was the Hurricanes or the Sabres or whoever it was. Just a big deal. That would have really changed things up. But I digress. The big thing that actually – the first thing I thought of with the Demko signing is, what does this mean for Artur Silovs, which is interesting because, I mean, people who follow the AHL know how good he is, or people who follow maybe the playoffs know how good Silovs is, where he gets better in the playoffs, where he plays his best hockey for some reason when the pressure's at its most. And I thought Vancouver would want to keep him around for that. But when you have Lankinen signed, you have Demko signed, maybe you trade Silovs. I don't know, because it looks like around the league, a lot of teams are taking on an extra goaltender, taking on 3, where they're signing an extra one because they're like, we need to have a backup because our backup might get hurt, or our duo isn't going to last us the whole season where we need that third one. So maybe they trade him, maybe not. I actually wanted to ask you, Matthew, which is based on these signings, what direction the Canucks are heading, and do they see themselves next season as contenders? Because I think initially it felt like they weren't, where it was they're firing Rick Tocchet, they moved on from JT Miller at the deadline, but they bring in Evander Kane already. They brought him in before free agency started. It looks like they're trying to contend more. I mean, trying to predict what Jim Rutherford is trying to do here is hard to do, hard for us to do, and hard for anyone to do for that matter. But I'm wondering what direction do you think the Canucks are heading in, or where do they see themselves in this big picture in the Pacific Division, especially after the moves they made?
Oh, and then you've got a Mitch Marner joining the Pacific as well, which makes it even tougher. I mean, it looks like I think they're again back to 2 years ago when they were borderline playoff team. I mean, wild card. I mean, that's where I saw them before all of a sudden they just broke out and won the Pacific. It came out of nowhere. But I think they're in that position again where they're just going to be kind of there. They're not for sure playoff team, but they have the players to kind of be competing. They've got a lot now that they've signed Besser and all that. They're really up against the cap. So they have to do some moves to kind of get under it. I think they're in that bubble area. They're not contenders. They're not bad, like basement dwellers. They're going to be in that mix pretty much exactly how they've been in the last, minus that one kind of flash in the pan season. They're just kind of right there around the wild card spots, I think.
Yeah, I mean that is interesting about it because you look at that. Yeah, you look at the division. Edmonton, even though they're losing a few pieces, they're not going anywhere. Los Angeles is getting better, I think. We could discuss that. Vegas isn't going anywhere, and then you got some teams on the rise. So you really enter this season with a sliding doors moment where if the season starts falling apart early, maybe you trade Quinn Hughes, or maybe you look into start selling again. I don't want to get into I don't want you to start thinking of that already, but the other path is where they are good and then you start looking to add to that. But
there's lots of stuff still involved. I mean, there's could be a whole hour we could talk about the Canucks, what they're doing. But Faravari and Eklund in the other extensions, I mean, Washington, I think he was going to be an RFA. He still had a year left in his contract too, so that's a pretty good deal for them. I mean, they've got a pretty good young blue line, and Eklund, of course, is in that San Jose Sharks, and he just ended his ELC. A little over $5 million. Zach, what do you think about those two deals? I mean, Eklund supposedly is going to be part of that big future with the Sharks. Hopefully, that Celebrini and Michael Misa are the two guys that are going to lead them to being back to that contending Stanley Cup team. But what do you think about those two ones?
I think they're both good deals for young guys who look to be, cornerstones of these franchises for a while. I mean, the term isn't bad at all. We look at the terms of the contracts. They're decently long. They're not too crazy. And even the AAVs aren't bad either. So I think you kind of lock up your young guys, which a lot of teams want to do now, especially with the cap continually going up. Now they can go and keep these guys. But hey, if we're kind of on the rise or we might have a down year next year, at least we have these guys locked up for a while and don't got to worry about losing them at some point. So I think even for the Sharks and Eklund, they're on the rise, like you said, with Celebrini and Misa. We're not even forgetting about, Will Smith too. Yeah. Like the Sharks are going to be in a good spot in a few seasons. So now you lock up Eklund. Now you kind of get that core, going a little bit more. And then for Faravari, I mean, I think the Capitals at some point are going to have to retool because they're still a pretty old team right now. So I think at least you got one guy kind of locked up for the future. Now it's just kind of figuring out the rest of your roster from there. But so I think these are just young cornerstone guys on both teams that, are going to be in different spots next year. But I think it's deals that makes sense and it's not going to break your bank. And it's, at least you're giving them the paydays that they have, but it's not going to be, you're not killing yourselves in however many seasons with that. So honestly, great deals for both these guys, young and AAV term, not bad at all. And these teams put themselves in a good spot to continuously grow around them over the next few seasons.
For sure. And I think these extensions, I think they're all good. We've talked about it. Demko, everyone's just worried about that he's not going to be healthy.
It's 3 years. It's not that bad.
Well, then it is bad. But
it's not a Shesterkin contract where you're looking at that price tag. And after the season he had last year, you better hope that gets figured out. And that's the thing. You don't know with goaltenders. It's a very big toss-up. So it's just, I think, is it high? Maybe, but like you said, it's a short term. I'd rather take a short term on that AAV than give another guy that 7-8 years of 10 million plus for a goaltender. That's a very huge risk, because what's that going to look like if he starts going sideways and doesn't really pan out very well? So I don't know why people are really crapping on the Demko deal. For goaltending, I think that's fine for the short term that it is. It's only 3 seasons. And if anything, if maybe year 1 doesn't go well, okay, you have 2 years, you can figure something else out if another team wants them, or you can figure it out from there. So it's not going to break your back over the next if it was 5 or 6, then it'd be a different question, but the deal's fine. It's not that serious.
The Shesterkin deal, it's more of he's looking around saying, like, I wish I didn't sign this before all these players get traded. And now, like, I'm looking around and I'm like, am I going to be Henrik Lundqvist 2.0, where I'm a great Hart Trophy caliber goaltender on a team that has nothing, not nothing, but not much around helping him out, especially defensively. That's probably what he's thinking, honestly.
For sure. All right, well, let's get into actual free agency. We've talked almost a half an hour about stuff that's not actual free agent. They're going to be free agents next year. But yeah, let's start with Brock Boeser. And this was one that came out of left field. I literally yelled, and like I said, I'm like, yes. I didn't understand. I didn't get it. I did not expect it. Boeser re-signs with the Canucks on a 7-year deal. And this was what the Canucks were balking about, was the term. And it was 7 years, 7.25 million AAV, which that's leaving money on the table. He could have got a lot more in free agency, going to the plethora of teams that were rumored to go after him, from the Edmonton Oilers to the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're every team that needs goal scoring. We're probably in on him, but he outweighted it, and he wants to be in Vancouver, and waited for the Canucks to finally come to their senses and give him the extra 2 years. They wanted to give him 5, and that was it. It wasn't money. They were willing to go where he wanted. It was that term. Mike, what do you think about this deal? It looked like he was out the door to me, and he was going to join another team. But
it's also, you go further back and you're convinced he's gone, because the way you even go back to the trade deadline, where I think it's Jim Rutherford said, like, oh, if I told you about the deals that were on the table, you'd be laughing out the door. Something, you said something along those lines, and you're like, okay, he's throwing a player under the bus in the, like, heading to free agency. And then Brock Boeser during the post media cleanouts, he's like, yeah, looks like it's done, but. Yeah, it's interesting because also he left a lot of money on the table based on the conversations. Felt like he was going to get $9 million or $8 million per year, which is what you'd think he would get in that range. JT Miller's getting $8 million. He could probably get around that range, and he took $7 million, and it's the 7 years, I think, which is interesting. It's another one that's interesting because I thought he would have gone for a 4-year deal. Let's say a 4-year deal in Edmonton, let's say. And you take the high AAV, but that puts you at 32 years old, and you still can get one more big contract. We've seen Chris Tanev, Brad Marchand. We've seen 30-year-olds get these big deals. It's not like he needed to take this long-term deal now, but I guess there was a lot that we didn't know, was like how much he wanted to stay, how much how comfortable he is in Vancouver, and that he was willing. And they gave him the 7 years, and maybe there wasn't that market for a 7-year deal. That he wants that term. He wants the extra money. But overall, yeah, I think it's good. And I think we mentioned earlier, we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks. This helps them look competitive. I think they're going to look competitive next season. It's a good pitch if it all circles back to Quinn Hughes. It's a good pitch to keep him there, because you got all these pieces there that are you're going to look a lot better next season with all this in mind. And I think it's definitely a better deal for the Canucks than I see for Besser. I think Besser could have gotten more elsewhere if he went to free agency. I just don't think he wanted to as much, which is probably the other part to that, which is probably the underlying theme, I think, honestly, to this.
Zach, what do you think about Besser? I mean, I know you had him as a target for the Hurricanes, of course. I mean, did you think the Besser was gone from Vancouver? It looked like it was like the minuscule is probably like 0.002 or whatever percent that seemed like that he was going to come back, but ended up getting done.
Yeah, it was a little bit surprising. I think I even was like, hey, can we get a wellness check on you, Matt? Because I was like, wow, okay. But it was a little bit surprising. Like you said, it seemed like he was probably going to be gone. You know, he wasn't going to get the contract that he wanted. It seemed like Vancouver was, going to let him walk. Because it was crazy because I think the last 2 seasons, I haven't gone back to this past trade deadline, but even last year there were talks about, is Vancouver going to move him? And it's just kind of crazy when you think about it. You're looking at 2 seasons of, is this guy on the trade block to now he gets the extension, and it comes out where it's like, no, he wanted to stay in Vancouver. He just wanted them to give him the 2 extra years. And that goes to, it was talk like, does he go to Edmonton? Does he go to Minnesota? Like, he's fine with being in the cold weather, but I guess he really liked Vancouver. And I was like, it was never about the money. It's just, I want the stability of 7 years in a place that I've played my entire career at. So it's starting to look like Brock Besser could be a Vancouver Canuck his entire career. And I think a lot of fans are going to love him for that, because you don't really see a whole lot of one team guys unless you're looking at like a Ovechkin or a Crosby or those type of guys that you can do a full year. I mean, now probably be Jacob Slavin for Carolina, but you look at Besser, he's on that track to being a Canuck for life. So, and honestly, he was projected $8.5 to $9 million for 6-7 years. So now you lock him up for that 7 at under 7.3. That's a fantastic deal on both sides, because the Canucks just got a discount for a guy who could have made way a lot more. But I think for Besser, it's a good win for him on the money side, because he's still getting paid more than he was getting last year, but he's given the Canucks a chance to still build around him and all the other guys on the team. But now he gets that, I know where I'm at for the next 7 seasons. I'm not worried about going anywhere. So, it was very surprising. But honestly, I think it's a fantastic deal for both sides, because now you got your top winger locked up for 7 years now on a great AAV that's just going to make it even better as the seasons go on, especially next offseason. That 7 point whatever it was is going to look really good with all the other which I think is the better 2026, the next year's free agent class. Yeah. Oh, if everyone wanted chaos this year, next year is going to be chaos. Yeah. They don't have to worry about Besser because he's there.
Yeah,
and just sitting back on, all right, bring other guys, build around me. Let's take this thing. That's all it is right now for Besser. Build around me.
Well, that's the thing, and he's 28. And bring him to like 35, which is, and then you'll get to those 1-year deal things where you kind of go year by year, seeing if he's still good to keep going.
Well, maybe not, because look what Marchand and Chris Tan have got.
That's true. You could sign another long-term deal, I guess.
I mean, Besser, that's another point is Besser's skill sets age very well. He's a scorer, has a good shot, plays on the wing. It doesn't really take a lot of those hits that keep him out of the lineup. And I think he plays close to 82 games every season. So just in terms of that.
Except for the concussion. I mean, as long as people don't hit him dirty hits, but which would happen last season. He was out for a couple weeks because he had a concussion. But other than that, he's been relatively healthy. But yeah, I think, and the one thing, it was Don Taylor on Donnie and Dolly. He mentioned this, that Besser's not fast. And that's the thing you worry about as guys age, is are they going to slow down? He's not. His skill set isn't based on speed. It's based on, he scores a lot around the net. Like you said, he's got a great shot. So, I mean, he doesn't need to be fast. So by the time he gets into his 35 age season, even if he does slow down a bit, really, is it going to make much of a difference? And look at Corey Perry too. I mean, he's not fast, and that's why he's playing up into his 40s, and he's still able to contribute because he scores all around the net. That's all he does.
Same thing for Alex Ovechkin. Same thing. Like he didn't look like he skated very hard at all, even in the playoffs, and look what he can do. So yeah, it's speed isn't the main thing. It's good to have, but we all know what the main important thing is.
It's also not what's winning in the playoffs, which I think is really what matters. Also, like in the playoffs, you look at what's winning a lot of times. It's those physical lineups that also can score, and Besser in the playoffs has proven he can score, which is like that was why I thought maybe a team's going to overpay him somewhere else, because they look at his playoff track record, especially the 2023 or 2024 run, where they pushed the Oilers to 7, where he was scoring a lot for them, and saying maybe they could add him they'll add him for that, because scoring in the playoffs, especially, which is hard to find, that's a valuable asset. I feel like our free agency show is becoming a big Canucks and Hurricanes preview, which expected.
Well, I mean, the thing is, a few things that went down with the Canucks today. That's why. Yeah. So let's move on and go quickly through some other ones. We mentioned Vladislav Gavrikov. I mean, this is a guy that seemed like the Kings were trying to get him back. Ended up not happening. He's going to the Rangers. I mean, Zach, what do you think about this deal? I mean, the Gavrikov we talked about him yesterday on the preview show, that he's not really an offensive guy. He's more that good, well-rounded. And he's basically replacing Keandre Miller. Where do you think he kind of fits with the Rangers? And what do you think about the deal that he got?
I mean, it's essentially you're kind of replacing top 4 for top 4, and he's making $500,000 less than what Miller is making. So, I mean, it's kind of like almost a wash, and he's like 4 years older. So I mean, it's an all right deal. It's a 7x7, so it's really not an insane contract. It's just now you're looking at a guy who's going to be 36 by the time that contract's over. So it'll be interesting to see what he does for the Rangers. I mean, like I said, you're getting a little bit older on the blue line. I know they're still trying to figure out what they're doing over there with the Rangers, but I mean, it's an all right deal. I mean, it seemed like it was a foregone conclusion, because even before free agency started, it seemed like he was going to go to the Rangers. So I know people were talking about tampering being an issue, and it seemed like it was kind of a foregone conclusion before even free agency even opened up. So it is what it is. It's a good deal for both sides. It's just, how's that going to factor into the Rangers, who struggled a lot last season? And, is that going to help them defensively? Like I said, it's an overall all-around good guy. It's just, where they're looking past that, and you got to look at their, aging forward core. I know they also, extended Will Cooley, who's only 23, but that was a short-term deal. That thing was like a 2-year bridge, it seems like. So I'm not really sure what the directions for the Rangers is, but I mean, at least they kind of short up their blue line a little bit with kind of just a, replacing one guy on the top 4 for another top 4 guy with $500,000 less, but 4 years older.
Zach literally said what I was about to say, which is like, I'm not sure what direction the Rangers are heading. It's crazy, because I usually think of the Rangers as one of these teams that has everything figured out, or is a well-run franchise, that they were in the Eastern Conference Final 2 times in 3 years. Before last season, they didn't make it, but they made it in 2022, they made it in 2024, and you're like, they have a good core in place, and everything seems to be clicking there. And now it's like they move on from Chris Kreider, they move on from Jacob Trouba. You're getting rid of these players. You're like, okay, maybe there's a retool on the horizon, or a rebuild. And then they bring in Gavrikov, and you're like, okay, and they trade Miller. So it's really like you're bringing him. It's kind of like duct taping stuff. You're bringing Mike Sullivan, which I guess like you make that hire regardless of what direction you're going in. But he's the type of coach where it's like, all right, we're competing. You don't know what direction they're heading in, which is kind of crazy, because I always think of them as between the Devils and the Islanders in that New York area, they're always the one that is in the cup conversation, or more or better run. But now you're looking around, you're like, Panarin's good. Who are their 5 best players? It's Panarin, Shesterkin, Adam Fox is good, but not in the same tier as Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, which I think everyone was hoping he would be, or everyone thought he would be, which is kind of concerning also on its own. I don't know what direction they're heading in. And the Gavrikov sign, you could talk yourself into it, but in the big picture, it's just like, yeah, I'm a little concerned with what's going on with the Rangers.
Yeah.
Also, too, they're also looking at maybe getting rid of Zibanejad, so there's another guy for forward core that could be gone. And like at that point, what's really the big picture for them at this point?
And Panarin's a UFA next offseason too, so it's like,
exactly.
It would make sense for them to trade Panarin, but they won't because they're in this at this crossroads, or they're in this caught in the middle, or they think they're caught in the. They think they're closer to contending, but trading. Yeah, you mentioned Panarin; he's a UFA. Trade him now when his value is highest. I mean, I think he has a no move clause, so deal with that. But they're the team that it's in no direction. It's concerning for a team that usually has stuff figured out.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what the Rangers do. It seems like the Canucks and the Rangers are in that same kind of boat. It's like, where are they? And two teams that seemed like Stanley Cup contenders a couple seasons ago, which is kind of weird. All right, well, moving to another New York team, Mike. I mean, the Islanders, you say, they've been in the news a lot. Of course, they have the first overall pick. They traded Noah Dobson. Today, they signed a couple guys, not massive names. And we talked about Jonathan Drouin yesterday, where he could go. Well, he goes to the Islanders. And the one that really kind of confused me was David Rittich. So, Mike, what do you think about these two signings that the Islanders did?
Right off the bat, David Rittich, when I see that, my impression is, okay, Varlamov, they're not telling us he's out, but you could kind of project that he might not be ready to start the season, or he might not be ready to really be a regular backup. So this is Rittich gives you options in the sense he could be a backup to start the season. Varlamov, keep in mind, is 36. So in the sense, like how much is left in the tank for him is I don't know how much there is. Sorokin, you don't want to run into the ground. They've done it in the past seasons. Yeah. So you look at the big picture. It's if Varlamov's healthy, then all right, Rittich goes to the A. He's that AHL, NHL goaltender. He's in between, which helps a lot considering they want to have a good AHL team. They want to be a lot better than last season, which was historically bad in the American Hockey League. But I digress on that. That's the first impression on that deal, which is, okay, it gives you those options. At first, it doesn't make sense to have three on your roster, three goaltenders. But the other part, the big picture Islanders part, I'll probably try to write about this, assuming by the time we're done recording, there hasn't been a big trade or big signing that's happened that I completely missed, and now it's forced us to completely scrap everything because that's how these things work. But the big picture is Darsh is getting a lot of, in baseball terms, he's getting on base or he's getting a lot of singles. He hasn't hit that home run yet, which I think in your first off season, this is what you want to do. You kind of want to. You don't want to do anything too crazy. You don't want to maybe take that big swing and then it backfires in your first off season, even though he did trade Noah Dobson, so that was a big swing there. But it's a lot of these safe signings, adding depth, kind of waiting to see how next season plays out. Maybe they're one of the better teams in the division just because of how things shape up, and if Matthew Schaefer's ready, let's say, or some of these prospects who are in the system are ready, it does allow you to push forward and contend. But if not, you still have that door open to retool, rebuild, and these depth signings kind of leave that door open as well for that. Drouin, they said he's going to be a top 6 skater. I'm like, okay, good luck with that, I guess. I don't know. I don't see it. I mean, maybe he could be a top 6 type of player, but I mean, I think it's more of like, at this point, it's similar to Pajot, which they have like a bunch of these players. Yeah. It's like in that same Pajot tier where you're like, all right, they could play in the middle 6 or they could play in the depth roles and help out there. But that's kind of the Islanders checking on that. That's the big picture thing when I look at these type of deals with them.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, Drouin had a pretty good season last year. I mean, he's been good. He hasn't been great, and I think we'll see how maybe he'll fit with Barzal or Horvat in the top 6. I mean, that's 2 good centers. Or even Pajot. I mean, that's a pretty good center to play with too. So he's going to have someone good to feed him the puck. It's just, will he be able? I think staying healthy is another thing for him. He's going
to have someone good, but it's not going to be Nathan McKinnon, which I think is
that's of course. All right, let's end with the last one here. Mikhail Granlund, which is an interesting one to me. Zach, I'll get your thoughts on this one. $7 million for 3 years. $7 million AAV, not $7 million for the 3 years. But this is just a little bit less than Besser got. And we were saying, is he going to get overpaid? I think this is overpaid. So what do you think about him signing with the Ducks?
Yeah, because you look at AFP Analytics, I think they were talking like somewhere around $5 to $6 something million, and that was just for 2 seasons. And I think $7 million is a little bit of a high overpay, especially going to the fact that you're going to a team like the Ducks who really aren't there yet. I mean, they're going to make a jump, but I don't think they're going to make the jump that you think it's going to be it. I mean, yeah, it's only 3 years, but you're talking for a guy who's 33. So this deal's going to be done by the time he's 36. I mean, hey, he's back in California, I guess. I figure, because we talked about him maybe going back to the Sharks more than anything else. I think the Sharks are probably a little bit better spot than Anaheim is, because Anaheim just traded away Trevor Zegras. I mean, yeah, you bring in Granlund, but I mean, I know you just drafted Roger McQueen, who's going to wear 95 because that's just a smart move to go with, because why not, for a lot of different reasons. But that was a shocker. I was not expecting the Ducks to go land Granlund. We talked about maybe going back to Dallas. Could San Jose be a part of it? I know the Hurricanes probably look at him as a 2C option as well. I guess the AAV worked in the favor where he's like, all right, I'll just go get my money, and then I guess just be part of a surgence of the Ducks. Yeah. Outside of that, I'm not really kind of sure where the Ducks are at in terms of their other guys that they've. I mean, I know they extended Ville Husso, and they got who's the goalie they just picked up in that trade? Mine's blanking right now. They traded Gibson for Priya Mrazek. So you have Mrazek and Husso, who were together. The goaltending is such a big question mark for the Ducks. It's like, well,
they do have Dostal, so maybe like they
will be the guy that.
Yeah. So basically, Husso is your third goalie, but they extended him for a good number of years as well too. Or maybe it's Mrazek's in the AHL. I don't know. The goaltending situation is so crazy for the Ducks, and it's just, I know they're on the rise, but are they going to be where they need to be at the end of his third year? Like, is it just him going to finally get there, or is it just, I'm writing out my last contract in Southern California on the beach? That's kind of what it feels like at this point. It's like, I'm just going to go get a tan and get paid for 3 years. That's basically what it looks like.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think the Ducks, they got so many young guys that they're just hoping that just come over the top soon. And some of their prospects, too, are going to start kind of getting into the lineup. They're an interesting team to watch. I think they've got some good pieces, of course, on defense. I think for the most part, it's all on defense. But they got some great prospects coming up. Leo Carlsson is a great Mason McTavish still has to be re-signed, RFA. He's open to an offer sheet. That could happen. They're going to be – that's going to be an interesting team. They have signed some veterans over the last couple seasons that kind of got me. Killorn was one. You're like, what? Like, what? Why are you signing –
this is the story every year with the Ducks. Like I literally, I don't want to dwell too much on it, but this is my 5th season covering the NHL. And we've been around here for a while. Every year, the Ducks, it's the same sort of story. They're rebuilding. They still are rebuilding. They always have this intrigue with a bunch of young prospects on the way. And it's every year we hear they're going to make that big signing that's going to get them over them. They're going to get that star player. Them in Utah. I mean, Utah was, but it was they're going to get Mitch Marner. They're going to be in on Marner, and they're going to be that. They get him. That's going to really put them over the top. A few years ago was Jack Eichel. It's like the same idea where you get that one superstar that brings this young core together, and every year it doesn't happen. They end up overpaying, whether it's John Klingberg or Alex Killorn or. You just name Radko Gudas is one of the. You look at these names. Brian Dumoulin, they overpaid at one point. It's just like they overpay these veterans over the hill, and it's happening again. Where it's like Granlund, it's like that's the veteran they're overpaying this time, and honestly, there's a lot more pressure on Pat Verbeek, who hired Quenneville, but with the expectation that's going to get you to the playoffs. You bring in Trouba, you bring in Kreider, but again, it's the same sort of story. It just like we could have repeated whatever we said last year at the off-season preview, and just like it's the same thing applies.
Yeah, agreed. And I mean, one of the years, I guess they're thinking that's going to happen, but not yet. We'll see when it happens for sure. All right. I mean, there were a few other signings, lots of small ones, and veterans and stuff like that. Corey Perry goes to the Kings. Everyone's like, "Welcome to the Stanley Cup Final, LA," but you're going to lose. I don't
know about the rest of the other signings, though. Good grief. Ken Holland is officially back with all those insane contracts. Oof, Maroons. Have fun with that, I guess.
Yeah.
Cody
we'll get to losers, I guess. Before we get to that, any under the radar signings that, I mean, there's always ones that happen. I mean, of course, just day one. There's lots of guys still out there. But like last year, Kiefer Sherwood for the Canucks was probably one of the more surprising signings. No one really kind of cared when he was signed. They were like, "Oh, Kiefer Sherwood, he's a physical guy, third, fourth line." It wasn't like it didn't make headlines, especially in Vancouver. Here, it was like, "Oh, Sherwood, we played him against him in the playoffs. He was annoying," but that was basically it. He goes out and scores 18 goals and breaks the hit record as well. So really big surprise. And he still has one more year under really low AAV. So if he does it again, he's going to get paid quite a bit. But for just day one, Zach, did you see any of these signings that went down? I mean, that could potentially be that type of one where it's really surprising by the time we're talking about it next time at this time. What do you think? Is there anyone that kind of comes to mind?
I think there's a couple, actually. I think Ryan McLeod to Buffalo for, got that 4 years. I think that'll be kind of interesting to look at. Even Christian Dvorak. I mean, it's not an insane AAV, but I think with what the Flyers have done so far on day one, I think they've kind of maybe make themselves a sneaky team that could maybe do something this upcoming season. But I think just because we were wondering where Dvorak was going to go, and I think that's kind of a nice little pickup right there. And I think they picked up a goalie as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I think the Flyers could be a team that where they kind of were really down in the dumps last year. They could be that, hey, this is this year's Washington Capitals. They're going to surprise everyone and come out of this thing and maybe make a run in the Metro, because even with the Rangers doing what they did and the Islanders with some of their interesting moves, I think maybe a wild card is up for the grabs and maybe even a third spot in the top three. I think, hey, who knows? Maybe the Flyers could be that team. So I'm looking at that Christian Dvorak pickup, getting him. And then, of course, like I said, McLeod in Buffalo. I think that could be another one, too. And they even picked up Alex Lyon. So I guess they're figuring what their goaltending situation is between, UPL and, what they're going to do with, Devin Levi with his up and down between Buffalo and Rochester. So I think, I think the Flyers are kind of that team that might be surprising a lot of people if all things kind of click for those guys. Because Danny Briere, man, he's making some moves. He is not afraid to go make those. I mean, he just he got Drysdale last season. Now he just picked up Trevor Zegras. Who knows? Maybe the Flyers could be that. How about that type of team?
Yeah. Mike, what about you? Does anyone kind of stick out as an under the radar guy you think will surprise?
What's so funny is I'm glad you mentioned the Flyers, because I had them as this under the radar team, like just a team to watch based on how they've approached the offseason and what they've done so far. It's just like overall, you look at their moves. It's also crazy. I don't remember the goalie off the top of my head. I probably will come to me in an hour from now, but it's like they needed a center. They needed goaltending. They got both. And it's like just that filled the need in free agency. And they've got a lot of young. Who?
Vladar.
Oh, Dan Vladar. That's
That was good. Yeah.
That's a good backup to have, or good at least someone who could split starts with whoever's in Philly. That's a solid addition. They obviously still have their weaknesses, but you've got a lot of young prospects on the way. Just like in Lehigh Valley, they had some intriguing names to watch out for, and you have Michkov, and the draft. You draft Porter Martone. They have a lot of young players on the way, which is intriguing to watch out for. And then they get their two needs. Under radar signings, I'm talking too much about that, but the one that I think came to mind was Connor Brown, which like I thought Zach was going to say that one because Connor Brown. The Devils also got Evgeny Dadonov, which I think was also a solid addition. The Devils enter this offseason saying we need, because interesting, they need depth and they need depth scoring too. And I think they also always need to address physicality because when it comes to the playoffs, they just like they get outplayed from a forechecking physical standpoint. So they're always trying to address that too. It's just a big picture problem with them. But Connor Brown's one of those players that does it all. He kills penalties. The Oilers, you could tell, like when they're saying, okay, we really are going to miss Connor Brown, it means a lot considering like the Oilers have all these star players, but he does all the dirty work there, and it's a value addition. I'll throw one name out there because I thought you were going to pick Connor Brown, Zach. So I'll just throw one name out there, which is Jeff Petrie joining the Panthers. Which
I was going to say,
which is it embodies the way the Panthers are operating, which is they re-signed their core, and that's the huge story there. But everyone talks about how do they dodge the cap? They live in the tax-free state and all the stuff that they're dodging the cap with and and it's like, well, signing Jeff Petrie is how you do it. Signing Nate Schmidt last year is how you dodge the cap.
Ekman Larson the previous
one. You bring in these players that are either bought out or thrown to the side. You bring them in for that minimum, that really good deal, and they play that depth role. And for Nate Schmidt, he got paid after that. He got paid handsomely by Utah. So it really pays off for these players. And that's how you do it. When you have your core and you really don't have a lot of cap spaces, much as people like to believe they do, it's those type of signings. That's another one that I'll just throw out there.
Yeah. I was going to say that this Jeff Petrie's their latest low-end veteran guy, goes to Florida, has a great season, then signs somewhere else. That's what Ekman Larson did. Now he's in Toronto. I mean, Schmidt goes to Utah after being bought out. Ekman Larson was bought out by the Canucks, and now he's in Toronto after winning a cup. So
I'll say another. I would say not just. I don't think it's a player, but I think it's an entire team that I think kind of were very sneaky that maybe people aren't really considering. How about the Detroit Red Wings? They got a lot of decent deals that isn't really super flashy. When you kind of look at it in the overall big picture, you're kind of like, okay, I might see what they're going for here. Because you look at, they pick up Van Riemsdyk for 1 year for $1 million, Jacob Bernard-Docker on the back end for $875, John Leonard, who did pretty well, all things considered, with the Caps for 1 year at $775,000, and even Ian Mitchell is a really good guy that you can have for some depth that could maybe do something. And they brought Patrick Kane back for $3 million for a year. So overall, I mean, you look at Albert Johansson on the back end as well, Simon Evanson, back there, William Lagesson. I mean, Moritz Seider. The defense looks pretty solid. Even looking at your forward core, Austin Watson, Marco Kasper, Connor Mazur, Berggren, Michael Rasmussen, even with the Brinket and all of them, I think the Red Wings, while they maybe have not had the flashiest of guys they've gotten or even training for John Gibson, I think where the Red Wings are at, I think they could be a team in the Atlantic that maybe like the Flyers in the Metro might surprise people with, like, maybe it's not sexy signings, but it's like, I don't know, if it all kind of clicks for this group, I would not be surprised if you see Detroit kind of making a little bit of noise this year in the Atlantic.
I mean, you're looking at especially their goaltending. I think they finally addressed it. If Gibson can stay healthy, that is. He is a very good goaltender and, play good defense. I mean, he's been pretty good with the defense. It's not been very good in Anaheim all these years. So we'll see how that goes. All right, let's talk about winners and losers because we've kind of alluding to it here. And I'll start with you, Mike. Quickly, I mean, we're kind of going over time here. We're closing on an hour for our show here, but winners and losers. I mean, we'll start with the winners after day one. I mean, not a lot of names were kind of signed, but you could even include the extensions, trades, anything that basically whatever team did whatever they did today that come out as winners.
Yeah, I'll try to do quick fire because we're running low on time. I mean, the winners, I like Florida, what they've done. I mean, it's easy. It's an easy button to say, yeah, Florida, they did they made the right moves. I like what the Devils did. We kind of mentioned their sneaky moves. We're doing winners. I was about to say a loser. So, but those two teams stand out. Vancouver, I like the Besser deal. Really makes it a good deal. Makes it a good day. That's what really puts it over the top. But those are your early, just the teams that stand out that come to mind as winners. Maybe a team that didn't do much is the Sharks, because what I had is for them, rebuilding team, just don't do anything stupid. And they traded for Nedeljkovic, which maybe you could say, all right, that's it. But they're overall good day they're staying on course, which is I think what you want to do.
Yeah. I'll throw the Calgary Flames in there, staying on course. They didn't do a ton, which I mean, probably shouldn't at this point. I mean, they're probably going to trade Rasmus Anderson at some point and get something in there. But yeah, what about you, Zach? What are your winners? I mean, you mentioned the Detroit Red Wings, so I guess you could have them as being a winner. Anyone else that you kind of want to mention?
I think for the Red Wings, I would consider them a winner. I think it's kind of a team that maybe could be close to that, where they've done enough moves. But I don't think it's like the overall big picture, guys. I think Vancouver is definitely a winner for me because of the fact that they did make a lot of great extensions and signings to make them better. Like Mike said, Florida is a team that you're like, okay, yeah, they did some moves. The Devils, they made themselves very interesting in this race as well. So I think those are kind of the guys that you can maybe look at. I would even say Utah might be one of those honorable mention guys that could be like, it's Tanev, it's Nate Schmidt, but I mean, they're kind of, on their way on the up. So, I mean, I would say Utah is kind of like the Red Wings, where they're kind of like, okay, they're doing some stuff. I see what you're doing. And even the Senators, could be a team that you can talk about as an honorable mention of like, oh, okay, I recognize what you're trying to do here. So I think those are my kind of winners for those aspects.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, Ottawa signed Lars Eller, which I think is a very under the radar type move too. A good, versatile center that can play up and down the lineup. Great penalty killer as well. So yeah, that's a really under the radar move for them. And of course, they got Jordan Spence. This wasn't today, but that's
great.
As well. It is an interesting. And speaking of the Kings, he's probably going to come up in this next one. But losers after day one. Zach, I'll start with you because you did mention them.
100%. Yeah, they got guys, but oh my absolute goodness, they are some horrendous It's the Ken Holland special. Give horrendous contracts to guys who don't deserve those contracts. Cody Ceci, I don't know what it is about this guy, but teams love to throw him the bag of over $4 million for 4 years. Makes absolutely no sense. I mean, you got Corey Perry, but it's kind of like, okay, that's Corey Perry. I think they're going for the memes at this point. And Ducks fans are absolutely losing their minds seeing that guy on a rival. But outside of that deal, every other contract. I mean, Kuzmenko, I think it's a great contract for Kuzmenko at least. But you lost Gavrikov, but this is the defense you're going to run with for the next 3 seasons. Your defense just got so much worse for way too much money. You're talking about like, hey, don't be stupid. There's your stupid signings. And it's all on one team for multiple contracts. Like, people are trying to argue that the Keandre Miller contract was bad. I'm like, have you seen what the Kings just did? Miss me with that. Yeah, no, I think if it's the biggest loser of today, it's just by the Kings because of all these signings. Has been the absolute like, what are we doing here type of things. Other losers, I mean, I think you didn't really hear much from the Stars outside of the other extensions they've already had. So if we're talking like day one specifically, the Stars didn't really do much. But if you're including all those extra extensions before then, I think they did all right. I mean, other than that, I mean, Edmonton. I mean, I think Edmonton lost a lot of guys. I don't know where you're kind of, where that is going with that now. Because if you're Connor McDavid, like, you're looking at the roster going, what do we really have outside of the guys we already know we got? Mm-hmm. So I think you're looking at probably Edmonton and definitely the Kings are like my number one. Like, oof, what are we doing here? Type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they traded Edmonton, traded Arvidsson to Boston probably to clear cap space because, of course, they signed Bouchard to that crazy 10.5, right?
That Darnell Nurse contract. Oof.
Darnell Nurse, oh geez, yeah, that's a big one. And then you're looking at they lost Connor Brown, like we mentioned, which is a big guy. Corey Perry has been really good for them in the last couple seasons. He's gone. Of course, they traded
Evander Kane's gone. Yeah.
So I mean, lots of potential offense, and
their goaltending still stinks, and their goaltending still stinks.
So
run it back for a third season. Hey, third time's the charm, baby. Let's do it.
Mike, what about you for losers?
What's funny is on the note of the Oilers, I put them in the same tier as the Maple Leafs, a few other teams. Maple Leafs, you could throw. I actually threw Utah, the Ducks. I mean, until Ducks signed Granlund, but Utah, you could throw the Red Wings in there too, which is like I'm still waiting for that big move. Where is it? When is it coming? And it's just not there yet. And you're like, maybe it's coming in the coming at some point, maybe at midnight, but it hasn't happened yet. And you're like, the Maple Leafs were the team that I thought would really make a big move today, and they haven't. The Oilers have not. So you wonder what's going on there. But they're not losers. I'll put for losers. Yeah, we had the Kings. I'm just like, what is going on here in the sense? But you mentioned the Arvidsson trade. The Boston Bruins are a team where you look around, you're like, what is going on here? Where they bring in Victor Arvidsson, they bring in Sean Corrali, they bring in Tanner Jeannot, and you're like, yeah, I guess. Like, I don't. Yeah, they're a team that they tore it down at the trade deadline. They were like, we're tearing it to the studs. They traded everyone for assets, and you're like, all right, they'll rebuild around McAvoy and David Pastrnak, whatever. They'll rebuild there. And then they're bringing in these like veterans who it's like, okay, I have no idea what's going on there.
Boston's an interesting one. And then I'm pretty sure they were a loser last year too after they signed Zadorov and Lindholm.
They were mixed bag.
A winner. I don't know actually.
they basically got the Timu order of Brad Marchand and Tanner Jeannot, which I still don't understand how that trade with all those draft picks for Tampa still makes sense. That's insane. Yeah, but the Boston. I don't know what direction they're really going in. They brought Riley Tufte back. They brought Michael DiPietro back. Yeah. I mean, the only good signing they really did, all things considered, is bringing back Morgan Geekie, which I would have loved him in Carolina because he was a former Kane and he's been playing really well, but they gave him a contract. So it is what it is. But Toronto, like I said, Mike, I want to consider him a loser, but when you extend Matthew Nyes like that, not bad. So there you go. But
and they still, I mean, you're looking at the lost Marner, they don't have a replacement.
It's a 1-for-1. I keep it still a 1 for. I mean, I know they had no leverage in the deal. At least they got something back out of it. But I'm like,
Nick Roy is going to be a good third line center for them. I mean, he's very versatile. But
I don't say the Maple Leafs are a loser here as much as I'm waiting for that big move from them. I thought it was going to be Marchand actually, but no, it never happened. But you're still waiting for that, and it just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, and then Besser was also a talk that they were going to sign him too.
The Leafs were in for everyone. The Leafs were in for pretty much everyone.
They were out of them because they both signed with the teams they were with. So, all right. Well, to finish off the show quickly, looking at the two guys, these are the two big names that are still left on the board. Nikolai Ehlers, Pius Suter. You could say Dmitry Orlov would probably maybe be included in that too. For defense, I guess he'd be the best defenseman left. So what do you think? Quickly, when are these guys going to sign? Are they going to sign this week, or are we going to kind of drag it out here? I'll start with you, Mike.
My battery's about to die, so I'll probably just say this quickly. I might just blank out. My screen might blank out on me, but Ehlers, I think, happens in the next few days. Suter might be one of the remaining ones, but I think because of the offer sheets, those are the type of deals that are just going to keep going potentially until August. A lot of teams want to take care of that business, but Ehlers is now the one that, now that the dust is settled and we kind of know in musical chairs which teams are still looking for that big game hunting. We're talking about the Maple Leafs, the Oilers were waiting for these teams to make a splash. Now, maybe one of these teams will with Ehlers. So I think that's where maybe tomorrow or maybe when we record this. But other than that, Yeah, the Hurricanes. Maybe by the time we record this, they're gonna have that signing done. Maybe also, by the way, because Brock Besser re-signed, wouldn't surprise me if the Jets re-sign after it all said and done. Like maybe he goes back there. I mean, if Besser could and it looked like he was gone, maybe Ehlers will.
Yeah, I see it. Maybe. I mean, and the Canucks on Suter, the Canucks haven't closed the door on him either. Alvin said, "Ball's in his court. We know he knows what we think of him." And basically, it's like this is the offer. You take it, or you go somewhere else. So, Zach, what do you think about these two guys?
I think because I know they were talking about TSN's free agent frenzy. They were, with Bob McKenzie, who big shout out to him, just officially called it a career. Big OG of the OGs, 40 plus years of doing the thing. So big shout out to Bob real quick. But he said it's going to be a few days for the Ehlers because he wants to figure, he's listening to other teams, figure out what his role is going to be. Supposedly he wants to go to warmer weather. They said the two big teams in the mix are Washington and Carolina. So, and Eric Tulsky even said to his media availability that they are still in on Ehlers. They've been talking to his camp. They're kind of just waiting to see how that plays out. So I think it could be this week. It could be maybe latest is early next week. We could even know something by like a week from today. We know where he's probably at. And it's just trying to figure out role, money, term, all that stuff. But Ehlers is going to get it done sooner rather than later. And I think it's just, how's that going to play out? Suter, I thought he was going to go today. I was kind of surprised that he wasn't yet. So I think it's not going to be it's not going to be as long of a wait as Ehlers is going to be. I think Suter's probably getting it done by at least the weekend, maybe Sunday at the latest. It could be Vancouver if they were willing to bring him back. Because like you said, they brought Besser back. Maybe that's kind of an avenue to go down. I still wouldn't be upset if the Hurricanes being running for him because we still technically need a 2C. It's not the sexiest 2C option, but it's better than where you're at right now. And you don't have to give him that much of a term. But I think those two guys at least will probably be this weekend or Tuesday next week at the latest. If
so they're the last
we know when it's done.
So we'll see. Yeah. We'll see where they go. But most of the guys kind of went today and or re-signed with their own teams. But lots of stuff to talk about. Of course, we talked over an hour. So big day of a bunch of stuff, trades, extensions, signings. So make sure to check out everything at thehockeyriders.com. We got all the news stuff. We got the tracker live. You can take a look at all the signings that have happened, all the minor ones as well. And of course, all the analysis is going to come out afterward. But check all that out. But until our next episode of whatever video you're going to partake in, we'll see you next time.